experience of Islam in this field is very different from that of Christianity in this particular situation. Christianity had to develop a law outside of the direct teachings of Christ in order to run human society. The teachings of Christ were purely spiritual instructions of the highest order about humility, goodness, love of the neighbor and of God, the two great commandments of Christ, God, love, and God, the neighbor. Love the neighbor, love God and love the neighbor. These remain the central teachings of Christ, turning the other cheek, which unfortunately many Christians have forgotten. They only have one cheek today. Many people, one should slap that cheek to get banged on the head with a gun. But the teaching of Christ was to turn the other cheek, obviously. But there was no teachings about economic life, social life. And so when Christianity, destined by God to become not the religion of a few fishermen, but of a whole civilization, became the founding principle and presiding idea and spiritual form and presence of Western civilization, it had to develop law. And it took over Roman law in the south, common law in the north, and combinations thereof. And so there was never an organic relationship between the religion and the laws of the world. It was always between moral laws of the individual and of the spirit. In Islam, in contrast, as we all know, law is practically associated with the heart of religion itself. It's as important in Islam, as I've always said, as theology is in Christianity, not law is in Christianity. In a sense, you cannot be a serious Christian without understanding Christian theology, accepting some theological formulations. You cannot be a serious Muslim or a serious Jew. Judaism is very close to Islam in this matter without accepting the law of God, the halakha or the sharia. Now, we live in a world in which these certitudes have been broken. They were broken very strongly in the case of law, Dr. Ahmad, precisely from the colonial period. If not in the case of science, we were just debating this the other minute. It's the coming of the colonial powers and then the emulation by so-called Muslim governments of the colonial powers that broke the hold of Islamic law upon Islamic societies and has left all Islamic societies in a crisis, including places like Iran, which after 25 years has not been able to promulgate completely the Sharia law. It's still working on it. The banks are not according to Islamic economics yet, but some banks are. People are working on it. It's a very, very difficult issue for the Islamic world because after a century and a half of the experience of the Tanzimat, laws in Iran, in Egypt, and India, and so forth and so on, to be able to have a political order based on laws, because politics has to be based on some laws, but laws which are at once divine laws and also human laws, in the sense that we live in a human society in which we have to have laws which are not necessarily existent in the traditional body of Islamic law. And so the whole question of fiqh, of not only jurisprudence itself, but the methods of jurisprudence, how to apply the principles, these are, of course, legal issues. Very, very prominent figures such as Ayatollah Zanjani, who is with us here, and many other scholars also in the Sunni world, have worked on this. But what has not been worked on, and which has been so much debated, and the Islamic world is being attacked all the time for this, is the philosophy of law. What is it that underlies the Islamic belief that God is the ultimate shari', that is the ultimate lawgiver, which is exactly what Orthodox Judaism believes God to be? In this issue, Islam and Judaism are very, very close together. And how is this related to running a state in our world today? Now, my